So, Hopsin has just released his newest album titled No Shame, and it's an album I've been waiting for ever since he said he was working on something, ever since it was called Savageville, and he did say this was the same album, by the way, just with a few tracks added on, a few changes made. And I've been waiting for it for a long time. I was incredibly hyped for it, so did this album live up to the hype? Well, today, I'm going to be telling you if I think it's good. And today I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently than I usually do my Is It Good reviews, because usually how I do them is I just review the album as a whole, say some things that I think about the album as a whole, but for this one, I'm going to be doing it as a track-by-track review. I feel like I could say something about every track on this album, so this is just going to be a kind of one-off where we're going to do that. But with that all being said, guys, is Hopsin's No Shame good? Let's talk about it.
No! I fell down in tears, my heart broke, I turned cold. I ain't want the girl that I'm in love with doing whole shit. If she needed cash, I would've loaned it.
This was an incredible opener track, and in my opinion, this one should have been Illmind 9. I know you might debate with me a bit on that, but I personally, there's no changing my mind that this one should have been Illmind 9. And Hopsin did say a long time ago that he was choosing between two tracks to be Illmind 9, and I assume it was this one, and the one he eventually chose to be Illmind 9. I hate saying that because all the comments will be like, oh, he said Illmind, haha, you're hilarious. And, like, this song fits the theme perfectly for what the Illmind series is, and the music video for this song just writes itself with the way that Hopsin made it. The Australian accent he does on this track is pretty funny when he's imitating the police officer, but the rest of the song is just raw emotion. He goes from angry to calm to breaking down in tears when describing the situation that he was in when he found out that his ex-girlfriend, well, at the time, his girlfriend, was cheating on him and worked at a strip club while she was pregnant with his kid. Or at least he didn't know it was his kid because she was cheating on him, so it was just a whole terrible situation, and it's one we already knew about going into the album if you follow Hopsin on social media, but the way he told it on here, there was a lot of details in there that we didn't know, and it was just a fantastic opener. One of the best tracks in the album, and it was right at the start.
Niggas saying that they want some raw shit back, is right here, nigga. Yeah. Here, nigga. Listen up, yeah. Back in 1999 when I picked up a pen, I swear I used to wish for this.
This one is a great track to show people that think the Hopsin from Raw has disappeared. This just sounds like a much more polished version of a song from Raw, and it's absolutely brilliant. Hopsin flows great on here. It's an incredibly fun flow to listen to, and the beat is very nice, very Raw themed. Not to mention, I think this one has one of his better hooks. You know, Hopsin has been criticized for his hooks a lot, but I think this one did have quite a good hook. It's really catchy to me. I actually think a lot of his hooks are better throughout this album. There's some that are still terrible, but he has a lot of hooks that are very good throughout this album. Right here was another highlight track for me, honestly.
So here's my conclusion. As I sit in this booth, I'm conditioned to bruise, I'm vicious and gruesome. You're listening to some premeditated murder, yes, I meant to intrude. This Panorama City madness up against me, you see Prodigy, the rapper.
This track is pretty good, but I don't think I'm gonna come back to it often. The hook isn't really that great, and it does have some especially corny lyrics throughout it, such as not 21, I'm just too savage. And there was also I'm in my prime but I ain't no Optimus. That was kind of corny as well. However, I will say in terms of multi-syllable rhyming, this is probably one of the strongest examples of that on this album. And the beat was also kind of weird, but in a kind of interesting way. I just say it wasn't a bad track, not too memorable, and I'm not really going to come back to it that much.
Look, I honestly didn't know they were going to do this. I thought they were just going to write you up.
Write me up? What the fuck is this, middle school?
I mean, it's a skit. Is there much more I can say? It was quite funny. It made me laugh at points, although at some points I was laughing at how ridiculous Hopsin's angry voice got. But nonetheless, decent skit, made me laugh, wasn't too long, it didn't drag on, so that's fine. It was just fine.
I'm so tired.
At first, this version felt a little weird to me because I was so used to hearing the original version, especially not having the sitar and the instrumental, you know, the... I mean, you know what a sitar sounds like. And even when I'm listening to this version, my head kind of automatically fills in the sitar because that part of the instrumental is just stuck in my head. But after a few listens, this became my favorite version of this song by a mile. Like, I'll listen to this over the original All Your Fault any day. There's minor tweaks that he made for the most part, just like adding some more background vocals and harmonizing during the hook, adding this ad-lib during the hook as well, which is stuck in my head. I can't get it out and it keeps me coming back to the song. And the beat, like I said, is slightly changed. And I think this version just overall, it just sounded better to me. It's got the same hook, the same lyrics and everything, but it just sounded like a better version of the song. There was also this Kanye West type vocoder effect during the verses, which I thought was pretty cool. And this track shows that if Hopsin experiments a little bit with tracks that he's already made, it can make them sound even better. So I could say, I would like if he'd do this in the future, you know, finish a track and then go back to it and see how you could remix it and add different elements in before you release it. And then you could release it as an amazing song. Because this song was one of the best on the album, and I'd already heard it so many times before, and it was one of the highlights on here.
She does whatever I want her to, when I want her to. Yikes. I'm diving into her number one and her number two. Yikes. If I go too long without hitting it, I'ma get sick. I will. I fly her out often. Like, bitch, come get this chocolate dick. Yikes. No.
Again, this is another track with a really good hook, probably one of the best Hopsin has ever made. So that is a really good side to it, and instrumentally, in terms of the sound, this track sounds good, but the subject matter is a little weird and kind of hypocritical on here. As you can tell by the first track, Hopsin was pretty mad about his girlfriend cheating on him. As you would be. But then on this track, Hopsin details smashing someone else's girl who he knows is in a relationship and feels no remorse about it. Literally is like, I smash her because it makes me happy, I can get my stress out, and she smashes me because she needs money. And he essentially says, I don't care that she has a boyfriend. That's really inconsistent lyrically with the first track. It comes off as super hypocritical and kind of like he's contradicting himself. It's like Hopsin was cheated on and he knows how much it broke him, so why would he do that to someone else? Now this could be excused as this just being a completely fictional tale, but Hopsin did say the album is called No Shame because it's him just putting himself out there, telling us stuff about himself and showing no shame about it. So it leads me to believe this is a very true story, and maybe it's not, but happy ending. Happy ending is one that sounded like maybe a joke story. He was just doing it for fun, but no. Listen to his Sway in the Morning interview.
I tell the truth on the mic.
Okay.
I don't get on this thing and speak fakeness. My album's called No Shame.
Yeah.
I have a lot of crazy situations that I'm owning up to, and I'm explaining that the happy ending stuff really happened.
So that story is true.
That story is 100% true.
He talks about that like it's the most serious song ever and like it needed to be made, which by the way, it didn't. Look forward to when we're talking about that track. So I have a feeling this is a very true story, and if it is, it's very hypocritical. That's all I'll say. This track is very good in terms of its production. It's probably got one of the hardest beats on the entire album. His flow is really good on here, and when he does the harmonizing thing, it reminds me of Tech 9 a little bit. But like I said, the subject matter I just can't get behind. And people will probably defend it, say, oh, it's called No Shame, so he's just gonna put all his crazy stories out there. That doesn't defend the fact that this track is just weird and lyrically inconsistent, and I can't believe he used such a banging beat for a track about this. That's what I'm trying to say.
If flow the coldest, well, I'm flow below it. You know I'm bloated for me, so many niggas, so hold on a moment. Homie, y'all don't need a major label. I'm at home with Twitter fingers whipping up my own promotion. Rap monster, black mamba, you can't run from the red.
This is another pretty good track on the album. It does have what a lot of people would call an old school Hopsin vibe, and I do like that, but I feel like on this track he goes a little bit too far back. And what I mean by that is it seems a little immature in terms of the lyrics. There's a sound effect on the track, which, I mean, no one wants to hear that after like Eminem's Encore. He also does that thing where he does like silly voices when he's imitating other people. He imitates a girl on this track, and that's part of Hopsin that was a bit like the childish side that I didn't really want to see too much of in this album. And that's just a personal thing because I loved Raw, and he does that a lot on Raw, but I don't want to see 2017 Hopsin doing that. I want to see him evolve, and this one just felt a little immature to me. To be honest, I feel like this track would fit on Pound Syndrome. It sounds musically similar to Mr. Jones from Pound Syndrome to me. Like I said, it's a pretty good track, but it's not amazing. It does sound good, it gets you quite pumped up, but it's not incredible.
No one close to king. I write about it so much I done broke my pen, and I'm sick of pretending my life is so dandy and flawless. I'm stuck on the road to hell fighting demons, but I let them drag me across it while everybody...
This track isn't bad, but I honestly don't find it very memorable. Eric Tucker does a really good job on the hook, but this is a story we've heard a lot from Hopsin. This was essentially the story of a lot of the tracks on Raw, about how he was a loner in high school. He's essentially essentially just like sees himself as the black sheep of society, in the fact that people see him as a weirdo. He doesn't really gel well with people. It's a story we've heard a lot, and for that reason I just didn't find this track super interesting. It sounds good. The lead up to the hook by Hopsin doesn't sound that great, but overall it sounds pretty good. It's just we've heard this story a lot. I guess he even says it on here. He's like, I write about it so much I broke my pen. That's what this situation is. Not a bad track, just nothing new here. That's what I'd say about it.
I must be on something. The doctor couldn't snap me out my new room. I just ain't been feeling like I used to. I must be on something. I've been lost and ain't nobody found me to be.
For this one, the beat sounds like something right off of Raw. I know I'm mentioning them a lot, but the hook for this track is really damn good. I think this is a really good blend of Hop's styles, and the only complaint I have is the way that the vocals were mixed during the verses sounded kinda weird to me. Tracks like this make me realize how much Hop's rhyming has improved. Like, he's always been great at multi-syllable rhyming, but he's just getting better at it. This track really keeps up how dark this album is, and I think it's a pretty damn good track.
Tell everyone that they are this, tell them all no one they shouldn't get involved with. I recall when we first met up, you had...
The beat for this one surprised me so much, and I absolutely loved it. I'd never expected to hear Hopsin laying down his vocals over some chipmunk soul production, but that's what we got here. The beat was fantastic, but his vocals left something to be desired here, especially on the first verse. His singing sounds weird and it just doesn't really fit in until he starts that bitch I know flow. When he starts doing the whole I know flow, that's when it starts to work, but until then it just sounds really weird. After that point, his singing starts to sound pretty good. I also felt on the second verse, he especially sounds like Drake, but it sounded pretty good. It was mainly only on the first verse that the vocals sound weird. It's an alright track, the best part about it is the hook and the beat. It's definitely still listenable.
When I die, they can lean on me, no bill with us. You pee out and built it up, you wishing you was in the field with us. I'm the ill nigga, no deal, look at me grill nigga, suck it with me, then I will erupt. Still we must remain calm, Nate Palm in my dang palm, I'm a dark villain like Blaze Bond.
Damn, Hopsin's flows on here are great. The rhyming is incredible and it's just a good high energy track. I especially enjoyed the parts at the end of the verses where the beat broke down and slowed down a little bit. This was a great track and I do feel like Hopsin really releases his best tracks as singles, minus the next one that we're going to talk about. I could rant about this song for hours. I don't know why it's on the album and I don't know why it exists. I understand that Hopsin likes to have fun. Please don't comment saying, oh, you hate fun, CDTV. This track is just fun. No, this track is just abysmal. Not only does it not fit into the album at all, it's just bad. The hook is awful, and to be fair, the verses don't sound bad, and I like Hopsin's lighter delivery, but what he's rapping about is so stupid. There's a way to make a song about Asian massage parlors sound good, I'm sure, but this is not that song. And you may say, oh, it's fine, he's just having fun with this track, but watch his interview on the Sway in the Morning, like I mentioned earlier. He talks about this track like it's supposed to be accepted as a normal Hopsin track. It's terrible, and I just kind of ignore the fact it's on here. It's one that gets skipped every single time. It's not like I hate fun. Comedy can be implemented so well into rap music, and I love when it's done right. This is not an example of it done right.
I was listening to this. I got my money in this. I put it deep in this. Thugging your bitch in my ass.
And now on the flip side, this track is comedy and rap music done right. I thought this track would have lost some of its punch because we already know what the joke would be. It would be Hopsin parodying auto-tune rappers. But it worked so well again. I wasn't expecting the interview segment at the start and it killed me. The actual song itself isn't as entertaining as the first No Words, but it's still funny as hell and the joke definitely managed to pay off again.
Tomorrow. All I got is grinding on my mind, middle finger to the sky, fuck the planet.
I definitely love the vibe that this track has going for it. As it's about Hopsin's hometown, it has a very West Coast vibe to it, and with me being a fan of Dr. Dre type synths, I loved the beat on here. The lyrics were great too, with Hopsin reminiscing about Panorama City. This was another example of Hopsin trying out something a little bit different, and it works. It doesn't necessarily sound like your typical Hopsin song. I remember Joey T featured on Die This Way, and he kills it on this track too. He can hit high notes ridiculously well. I felt kind kind of lukewarm towards this track on my first listen, but now it slowly became one of the album highlights for me.
I really wish I knew you. I'm your father, you'll probably never be introduced to. You'll only see me on TV or maybe YouTube. But now I know your mama is probably dating some new dude. So how you liking her?
Now, I've already talked about this song in great length. You'll only have to go back about 2 videos on my channel to find where I talked about this, so I won't speak much on it here. You can go to that video to hear my full thoughts, but essentially, I really don't like it. Hotel in Sydney makes a much better Illmind9, as I said, and I think Hopsin didn't handle this subject matter well at all. It's the first Mind of Hopsin song that disappointed me, and if you're shocked by that statement, just go watch my video, I explain it. You may disagree with me, that's fine, because opinions exist.
Take it away. I want the peace. I want the happiness. I took a...
This track is great, and it is the exact opposite of how I expect a Hopsin track to sound. I think that's what makes it so incredible. A completely relaxed flow, with Hopsin actually questioning if he's causing some of his problems. All this is wrapped over some church organs with a pretty slow-paced drum beat. And then that goddamn hook. Oh man, when it comes on, it sounds incredible. It's some real gospel shit here. And even though the title kinda tells you that, I wasn't expecting this. I want to hear Hopsin trying out new stuff like this a lot more. It genuinely sounds great, and I love this track. It's so good.
Listen, I ain't gonna pretend to be the best.
Man, I love this track. It was the best single released to promote the album in my opinion, and is definitely a strong contender for being the best track on No Shame. Now personally, I think Marcus's Gospel would have made a much better outro track, but it doesn't take away from how good this song is. And to be fair, apparently it's technically a bonus track because the CD version ends with Marcus's Gospel, which is more fitting, but I don't like that Witch Doctor isn't on the CD version at all. I'd prefer if he just put a track before Marcus's Gospel, because I do want to hear it when I listen to the CD because I bought a physical copy, and I wish Witch Doctor was on there. Nonetheless, the beat has a nice theme with the African drums, and it goes incredibly hard. The verses are just fantastic here, and Hop spits his ass off. And in the third verse, the drums kick in super hard, and it's great. The intensity of this track is brilliant. I can't tell you guys how much I love this track, I just think it's incredibly good. So now it's time to discuss how I feel about this album overall and give it a rating. So, I did like this album. I was content with it, but I wasn't blown away. I was expecting Hopsin's best album to come with this one, but I still think Raw is my favourite. This album does contain some of Hopsin's best tracks, but whilst I was writing this review, I realised there was a lot of tracks that I just felt were mediocre. There was a couple filler tracks, and a lot of the tracks, they weren't bad, they just felt like they were missing something and I couldn't really tell what it was. This is what I mean when I say he should have done the thing he does with All Your Fault. I think if he finished these tracks, then listened to them again and went back to add more stuff like he did with the All Your Fault remix, I think a lot of the tracks would feel a lot more fully complete, because some of them don't. This album has an incredibly strong beginning. The first 5 tracks are really damn good, especially with Hotel in Sydney potentially being one of the best Hopsin tracks ever made, in my opinion. The middle was quite weak, and then we had a fairly good ending section of the album. So it wasn't great all throughout it, but it was still a good album. I'd love to hear more tracks like Panorama City and Marcus's Gospel, because it's great to hear him experiment more and do something that is different that you completely wouldn't expect. Now, I said Raw was my favourite album, but I don't want to see Hopsin go back to the Raw sound. I just want to see him keep evolving. Raw was my favourite because it was a product of its time. Going back in it, it hasn't exactly aged well, but I like it for the nostalgia now, not exactly because it sounds amazing. So it was a product of its time. I don't want to see Hopsin go back to that sound. I think he should keep experimenting and keep making tracks like Marcus's Gospel. Also, we'd already heard some of the best tracks from the album. The Purge, Witch Doctor, and technically All Your Fault were released before the album as singles, and they were some of the best tracks on here, so we'd already heard some of the best tracks, which takes a little bit of impact out of them in the context of the album. So for a rating, I'm gonna give this one a 7.6 out of 10. It's still way better than Pound Syndrome was, but I don't think it's as amazing as I hype myself up for it to be. Maybe my expectations, I just personally set them too high, but I was expecting Hopsin's best album ever here that would just blow me out the water, and we didn't get that, but we did get a good album that I did get a fair few tracks out of, so I think that's the perfect rating for what I think, a 7.6 out of 10. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. As this was a track-by-track review, it will be a lot longer than all my Is It Good videos, and I definitely had a lot more to say about this than a lot of other albums. That's just because I am a huge Hopsin fan, but obviously that's not going to stop me criticizing him. I'll be honest about what I think about his music. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. Let me know what rating you'd give it out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll hopefully see you all in the next one, and this is CDTVProductions, signing out.